Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. Now students, let's talk about our last topic here, that is the Quit India movement. Now students, like I told you earlier that this was the last movement, mass movement that was launched under the leadership of Gandhi ji. Okay students, now before this we have talked about two other important movements, that is the non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement. Civil disobedience movement. Now before this students, we have been talking about the civil disobedience movement and the round table conferences that took place. Now how many round table conferences have you read about? Yes, there were 3 round table conferences that took place in London. Okay. Now here students, now we are going to talk about the Quit India movement that was launched in the year 1942. We had learned that civil disobedience movement was called off in the year, or it ended in the year 1934. After that, many other changes took place in our country. Now one of them, since we had talked about these roundtable conferences, we saw that after the roundtable conference, an act was passed, that is the famous act, the Government India Act of 1935. Right students? And here we see that many changes took place. One of them was introducing the federal type of government here in India, introducing the provincial autonomy, and so on. Right students? So this is not important here, but since we have jumped to another important movement that happened in the year 1942, let us try to understand what were the circumstances that led to this Quit India movement. Now I am just asking a year here, that is 1939. Do you know the significance of this year students? Can you relate to it? If not, it was during this year that the Second World War had started, right? So we all know that the Second World War took place in the year, or it started in the year 1945 and continued till 1939 to 1945. Okay? Now here students, we are talking about the year 1942. Cripps mission, as you can see the name here, Cripps mission, it was sent to India in the year 1942. So what happened that led to this Cripps mission to come to India? So here students, in the year 1939, we see that the war had started, and we all know that Britain had also participated in the war, right? And somewhere they wanted Indian cooperation, because there was a point when Britain was on the losing side, right? They were losing these areas, and in India also they needed the cooperation of the Indian army here, the Indian people here. They wanted them to participate in the war. But on the other hand, we see that the Indians were demanding for complete independence. Now they had made this demand that unless you agree on this complete independence that you are going to give us, only then we are going to join the war with you. We are going to cooperate with you in the war. Right students? Now here Britain, they need Indian cooperation because they were being pressured by their allies such as the USA and the other countries. Right? Here that is why Cripps mission was sent to India under the leadership of Stanford Cripps. Okay students? Now as you can see in the image, he is Stanford Cripps and Mahatma Gandhi. They met here in India. Okay? Now Cripps mission, it was sent to solve the constitutional problem of India. So basically here in India, they decided that they are going to, the Indians decided that they are going to get complete independence. But were the British people or British officials, were they ready to give them complete independence? No. Under this Cripps mission, we see that they agreed to give India a dominion status. Yes, students, they agreed to give India a dominion status. Now, this might be a new term for you, that is dominion status. What do we understand by it? Here, dominion status, it means that India would be a dominion. Dominion here, it means that in very simple terms, it means that semi-autonomous or semi-independent body. For example, students, according to the Cripps mission, they said that they are going to give India a dominion status under Britain. It means that the Indian people, they have the right to form their government here. They had certain powers, and also they had the right to be with the Commonwealth nations or to exclude themselves from the Commonwealth nations under Britain. But here we see that there were some major loopholes in the Cripps mission, and therefore the Indians, they did not agree on this dominion status. Here the power of the defense was still in the hands of the British government. It means that the Indians, they were given the freedom, but not total freedom. Now here we all know that the Indians were demanding for complete independence, right? Try to understand the issue here. They were demanding for complete independence, that is free from foreign rule. But under the dominion status, they had to be a semi-autonomous, semi-independent body under the Britain, right? And the Commonwealth nations that were formed under Britain. Okay, students? So they were the dominions under the British nation. Here we see that it failed to solve the constitutional problem because be it the Hindus, the INC, Muslim League and other depressed classes people, everyone, they were opposed with this idea of Cripps mission that they had introduced of dominion status. Okay, so basically they wanted India to join the war, and therefore they gave them this idea that they are going to get dominion status. Indians, they refused to get the dominion status. They wanted complete independence. Now there is a complete lockdown here, and it was during this time that Japanese, they were taking the advantage here, right? Britain here is weak right now. Japanese, they started encroaching on the eastern borders of India, and Japan was a threat to Britain. Therefore, they needed Indian cooperation here. Okay? So the war situation it had wasn't in the summer of 1942. There was a growing threat of the Japanese invasion in India. Right, students? And they believed, the Britain officials, they believed that only with the cooperation of Indians, they would be able to defeat the Japanese who were encroaching, who were coming down to the eastern borders of our country to attack those regions. Okay? Now, Gandhiji, he also firmly believed that an orderly and peaceful withdrawal of the British can save India from internal anarchy and foreign aggression. Internal anarchy here, it means that absence of any government. Okay. So here these are some of the reasons because of which Quit India movement was launched. Now do you see this crucial period of 1942? Cripps mission, it came to India with some idea that they are going to involve them in the war, but they failed to do so. They were not able to provide any constitutional reforms. They said that India is going to have a constitution. The Indians would have the right, full freedom to organize, to design their own constitution, but the powers of the defense and the idea of the Governor General, nothing is going to change. So therefore, semi-autonomous body or semi-independent body would be the tag that the Indians would have in the dominion status, right? Despite the fact that Indians were demanding for complete independence. Now, this was the final launch of the movement here, the launch of the final movement here that we are talking about, the Quit India movement. Now, it was on August 8, 1942 that meeting of All India Congress Committee was held at Bombay that passed the famous Quit India resolution. So it was in the Bombay session that we are talking about that the Quit India movement, the resolution for Quit India movement was formed here, or it was passed here. Now Gandhiji here, he raised the slogan of do or die. In very clear words, he said that either we are going to get the freedom, either we are going to get the freedom, or we are going to die, we are going to die in the process, in the attempt of doing so. Okay, students? Now, this was a big statement, very famous slogan that we all have heard of, do or die, that was given by Gandhiji in this Quit India movement. So, when Gandhiji, he raised the slogan of do or die, people, they followed it, right? So, the sole aim here was to let the British government, to challenge the British government and to throw them out of the country. It was on August 9, 1942 that Gandhiji along with other leaders, they were arrested. Now this is a chaotic situation, a period of turmoil here, students. In 1942, Britain already participating in the war, they are facing their enemies from everywhere. Now in India, they had a major difficulty tackling the political leaders who rose in this movement against the British government. So again, the repressive measure here was to arrest all the political leaders, all the important leaders, in which Gandhiji along with Sardar Patel, many other leaders, they were arrested, Jawaharlal Nehru and so on. But there were many other local leaders who carried the movement forward. Okay. The Congress here, it was declared illegal. But later on, in 1942, with the absence of Gandhiji and his leadership and the idea that he had proposed, everyone, they resorted again to the path of violence. Now, this was a major drawback all the time that happened in these movements. So, later on we see that the movement, it assumed a violent turn. How? People, they went out to demonstrate and public life, it came on standstill. All the major political leaders, they are in jail. And people here, they did not know whom to follow, on which direction to go and what to do. So they resorted to this violent thing here. And here we see that they went on to demonstrate, they went on to protest, organize hartals. But the public life that we are talking about, it came to a standstill. People, they became violent and they burnt post offices, telegraph offices, police stations and other government buildings. Now here we see that people, they were in anguish, they were very much angry and therefore they decided to burn all those things that symbolize the British government, be it the post offices, be it the telegraph offices, be it the police stations and so on. It was the last mass uprising against the British rule in India. Like I told you, students, it was the last mass uprising. After this, many other acts and many other groups, they came to India from England, from London, and they tried to convince the Indian leaders and try to come to an agreement. But here, as a movement that we are talking about, Quit India movement was the last movement that led to the path of freedom for our country. Okay, as you can see that in this movement as well, people, they participated in large numbers, right? Many of them, they were injured, many of them, they had died, but we see that somehow here those who sacrificed their life, they did it for their country, right? For the freedom of their country. Now there was so much tension and the government, it got alarmed and became nervous. Now it is quite possible, right, students, that the government, it got nervous and they were not understanding what to do. Because remember, at the same time, they are in a war with their enemies. Okay? So it adopted a repressive policy to suppress the movement. Here they had to tackle with the Indians somehow. So all these repressive measures, they were taken against the Indians who were trying to create chaos, who were trying to follow the violent path here in this Quit India movement. So lathi charge, firing, beating and flogging, it became the order of the day. So like I told you, there were many people who died in this movement because the government, they now adopted the repressive measures here. Lathi charge, firing at people who were creating violence and beating them, flogging, everything. It was now the order of the day, right, to stop the movement. Many villages were looted and burnt. Now this is how the movement, it took a violent turn, and learning this, Gandhi ji, when he was released, he also went to a fast here, right? We will learn about that later on when India got finally independent here. Now about 10,000 people, they died in fighting, and 70,000 people, they were put behind bars. Bars here, it means that we are talking about prison. Now students, imagine the situation here that 10,000 people, they have died in this Quit India movement in fighting by the British government, and there were 70,000 people who were put behind prison, right students? So the situation here in India, it was quite a very disturbing situation, very chaotic situation, and the British government, now they really felt the pressure. Why students? Because it was in the year 1945 that the Second World War, it ended, correct? But they had lost a lot in the war. They did not have enough money, enough resources, and here somewhere it was in 1946 that they decided that they are going to free India, right? So here we see that finally in 1947, that is on 15th August, we got independent from the British rule, right? So Lord Mountbatten, he came to India, he proposed a plan, and here we see the partition of India, it also took place during this period, right? Because here it was in the year 1940, like I have told you, that Muslim League under the leadership of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, they demanded for a separate Muslim state, that is Pakistan. So India was divided into two separate states, two separate countries here, that is India and Pakistan. Okay, so this is how the whole movement ended. Many other conferences were taking place here in our country, but later on finally we got independent in the year 1947.